Hey y'all, welcome and welcome back to another doll movie review. Today we're going to be taking a look at Frights camera action from Monster High. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with the series that I've been doing, I never saw any of the old Monster High movies or webisodes or anything like that when I was younger, so I've been doing a series of movie reviews as I watch those things for the first time. And for those of you who are familiar, the title will tell you that this is going to be a bit of a different video, because pretty much all of the other Monster High media that I have reviewed has been on a scale from like bad to neutral for the most part. I did really enjoy Scarus, but most of my videos have been like pretty negative, but this one is different because I actually really liked this movie, which is like such a shocker to say, but such a pleasant thing to say. So if you have seen my previous media reviews and you're used to me being like really negative and really critiquing, this is going to be a little bit different. I do still have a couple of things here and there that I want to critique like a smidgen, but it's definitely going to be a lot more like positively focused, and I mostly want to talk about the things that I thought were really done well in this movie. So it's going to be a bit more of like an upbeat media review than you might be used to, but hopefully that will be fun for you guys. Of course, as per usual with all of my videos, honestly, everything I say is just my opinion, so if you guys disagree with me, it's totally chill, and I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And then also, as per usual for these media reviews, I'm going to be going into this with like full spoilers, assuming you know what I'm talking about, because it's a lot easier to make these videos if I figure we're all on the same page here. So if you haven't seen Frights camera action, maybe go ahead and pause the video, watch it, and then come back so that we all know what we're talking about. And then lastly, if you do find yourself enjoying the video, if you could give it a like, that's super helpful to me. If you're new here and you enjoy your time, definitely subscribe so you can see more videos of this nature and like other doll content, literally any other doll content. I'll make any video. And if you want to go out of your way to support me, I have links and stuff in the description down below. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the review. So if you guys have seen any of my other Monster High movie reviews, or honestly, most of my Monster High videos, you will probably know that I'm not a fan of Gen 1 Frankie, which I know is kind of an unpopular opinion, but I just really don't like her in Gen 1. So normally I have a section in these videos talking about why I didn't like Frankie, but today I just get to tell you that Frankie wasn't a big part of this movie. She wasn't like part of the main thing going on. She had a couple throwaway lines here and there, but for the most part, she wasn't in Frights camera action, and I loved it. Okay, but really, it's time to talk about something serious and like actually talk about something instead of just making a joke at Frankie's expense. So I wanted to start off by talking about Draculaura, because Frankie wasn't in this movie a lot, but this movie was very focused on Draculaura. Now, going into this film, I honestly didn't feel much of anything towards her. Even though she's a main character, I feel like she hasn't had like the most characterization in the other pieces of Monster High media that I've seen, and the other ones that she has featured in, especially like Why Do Ghouls Fall in Love, I feel like the way she was handled with the writing made it really hard for me to know how I should feel about her as a character, and it just made it difficult to feel anything, because it's like, is she doing bad things? Is she doing good things? I can't tell, so I just kind of didn't feel anything going into Frights camera action about the main character of the movie. Honestly, it kind of worked out well for her, because this movie made me appreciate Draculaura so much more. I just think she was extremely well written and had a really strong character that I genuinely enjoyed. Throughout the entire movie, Draculaura is shown to be extremely passionate about her heritage, and she really just wants to do things that are helpful for vampire kind, but she also wants to make sure that she's doing those things in such a way that it not only benefits vampires, but it benefits monsters as a whole. In general, she's just really concerned with trying to do the right thing and like wanting to be like an upstanding citizen, I guess you could say. When Draculaura is told that she is the next vampire queen, she's obviously very excited, but it does turn out to be a ruse and it's not real. And when she realizes that she isn't in fact the real vampire queen, her first reaction is that she needs to tell people and needs to like do the right thing and make sure that the proper vampire queen is found. It would be so easy for Draculaura to have said, you know what, maybe I'm not the vampire queen, but I'm gonna take this deal that Stoker is offering to me. I'm gonna pretend to be the vampire queen so that I can be important and have all these things and be popular and all of this stuff. Like, it would be so easy for her to do that. but she doesn't. Like, yes, she is sad for herself because, like, that's a hard thing to go through, to think that you're someone so special and then it turns out that you've been lied to. But pretty much immediately she jumps back from it and is like, okay, you know, I'm not going to go along with this plot. I need to find the vampire heart. I need to find the real queen because that's what's good for vampires and that's what's going to be good for the monster world in general, is to have someone other than Stoker ruling. I just thought it really said a lot to her character that she was willing to put her own desires aside and wanted to do something that was like the right thing to do, and also that she thought would be helpful to the most amount of people. And then circling back to the thing about her being really like into her heritage, in the movie, there's like a movie within the movie, right? And Draculaura is not happy with how the vampire court is portrayed in this set of movies because it's just inaccurate. And she says that that's not what it's actually like. This is inaccurate to her heritage. And she's really passionate about this. And I honestly thought it was really cool to see a lot of the other characters, like, most of the other characters are irritated with her for speaking out, but she doesn't stop. Like, she's not going to not stand up for herself, and she's not going to not talk about these inaccuracies. And I honestly thought it was really nice to see, just because misrepresentation in media is a really big deal for many different groups of people for many different reasons. And I thought it was really nice to see Draculaura be so confident about her heritage and be so confident about like who she is and what matters, that she was willing to stand up and say, hey, no, this is not correct. Like, I don't appreciate my vampire lineage being misrepresented like that, especially because like the truth is also so cool and important. And I just thought it was like a really interesting way that she was portrayed. Like, it's not what I necessarily would have expected from Draculaura, but I really loved it. I think overall in this movie, she just had such an upstanding, like, moral character. She was so secure in her beliefs, and she wanted so badly to do the right thing. And I just really thought that she was super well written. Like, I don't quite know what else to say. I think her character was handled super well in this movie. I think the writing was just absolutely top-notch when it came to her, and I really was rooting for her the whole time just because I thought that she was really relatable and also really admirable, and it was super nice to get to see that. I feel like it's only right to talk about Claude right after talking about Draculaura. Now, he is one character that I do have a bit of a problem with, so we're going to get that out of the way before I talk about the things that I did like about Claude. Now, this has been pointed out to me by some of you guys in previous media reviews, and I have noticed it a little bit in other films, but I noticed it a bit more in Frights camera action, and so I felt like this was the time to talk about it. And that is the fact that Claude Wolf definitely has more dog-like and animal-like mannerisms than the other werewolves. He is a werewolf, so it kind of makes sense, but throughout the movie, Claude will like play fetch, and he likes getting scratched behind his ears, and he sometimes will express his emotions in like a non-verbal way with just very dog-like expressions. And in a vacuum, I don't think that this would be a bad thing. I honestly think the idea of making a werewolf act a little bit more like a dog could be cute and funny, because like this is something that's designed for kids, so it could be something that makes the idea of a werewolf a little bit less scary, a little bit more approachable. But the problem is that it's not in a vacuum, and so the issue arises because I think that Claude is really one of the only characters who gets this treatment. Other werewolves, like Claudine, are shown to also have dog-like characteristics, but for Claudine, it's really just that she has an exceptionally strong sense of smell. We never see Claudine playing fetch or anything like that, and I don't think, if my memory is serving me correctly, that I've seen other werewolves do, like, that sort of thing to the extent that Claude does. Like, Claude is just shown to be much more animalistic, I guess you would say, than the other werewolves. And the reason that this makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable and a little bit weird is that within Gen 1 of Monster High, the wolf family is pretty clearly meant to represent a black family, and in general, honestly, most, if not all, of the werewolves are kind of written to be coded to be black characters, which is great and fine and dandy until you turn the most prominent male of that like species and of that family in the show into someone who is shown to be very animalistic, and then it kind of gets a weird overtone. I would like to be optimistic and say that I don't think that this was intentional writing. I really hope that it wasn't intentional writing, but intentional or not, that is there, and it does make me feel weird. And I know, like I said, some of you guys have pointed this out, and it makes you guys feel uncomfortable as well. So that is a bit of unfortunate writing on Claude's part, because that's not great, right? But I do think other things about him are written well, at least within Frights camera action. In the past, in my movie reviews, I've said that he is written like sometimes really well and sometimes really poorly. But the good things about him within Frights camera action are that he is like so emotional, and I think that's honestly really nice to see. He's super sad at the idea that he's not going to be able to see Draculaura for a week, which is just so precious to me that he like cares enough about her to where a week's separation feels so difficult for him. And he's not shy about this, right? You know, like he's not afraid to express how much he cares about Draculaura, and he's not afraid to express that he's going to miss her. I feel like even now, but especially, you know, going back a few years, it wasn't as common to see men in media portrayed as being allowed to have these emotions and still be super manly. But Claude Wolfe isn't shown to be like judged by his peers or anything like that for how he feels about Draculaura and how he expresses his emotions. So I think he's a really good character in that way, because I think it's awesome to see a guy be able to be represented as having feelings and expressing those feelings very openly and not being judged for it. I think that's wonderful to see. So kind of hit or miss with Claude, which has been a theme throughout all of these, but at least there was some good for him. So for no reason at all, I'm like unreasonably attached to Hoodude. Back when he first was like introduced to the Monster High canon, I felt so bad for him because I honestly just think his backstory is so tragic. Like, he's just happy to be alive and he just wants to be loved, and I really feel for the guy. So I was super excited that he got to have a more prominent role in this movie, just because he really hasn't had a very prominent role in any of the media before. And I also think that it was well done. Like, he wasn't just shoved into Frights camera action in like a forceful and unnatural way to where it was like, oh, we need to give this character screen time. It felt like he had a purpose for being there. He was able to help the main cast, which I thought was so sweet. And he also added a really good sense of comedic relief sometimes, just because like he was chilling. Like, yes, there were very high stakes in the movie and he recognized that at some points, but for the most part he was just happy to be there, having a good time, enjoying exploring the world and living life, and I thought it was so wholesome. Also, throughout the whole movie, Hoodude is crushing on the actress Veronica Von Vamp, who is obviously revealed to be Elizabeth. And so when they're at like the final show, the finale of the movie, he goes up and asks her for an autograph, and she's so flattered by this that she's like, oh, do you want to be my date for the movie premiere tonight? And listen, I know it's unrealistic and I know it's cheesy, and I'm definitely being blinded just because of the fact that I think Hoodude is such a wholesome character, but he got his girl in the end and I was so happy for him. Again, I know it's for no reason. Like, I know that this is silly, and honestly, like, yeah, I understand I'm being a little bit hypocritical, because if this was a different character, I probably would be like, that's weird, like, that doesn't make sense, this isn't a real romance. But it's Hoodude, and I guess I just have blinders on, and I thought it was really sweet that he got to have a happy ending, getting to go on a date with the girl he'd been crushing on the whole movie. So I don't know if anyone will relate to this. I don't know if anyone else out there is like a weird Hoodude stan, but I was so happy to see him in the movie, and especially so happy to see him have such a good time in the movie. Now, in pretty much all of the movie reviews that I've done for Monster High thus far, I have talked about the subplots in a negative way. My general critique is that the subplots either aren't fleshed out enough, or don't need to be there, or there's too many of them. And like, the biggest thing to me is that they usually are detracting from the main plot of the movie. Sometimes it's because I don't think that the time needed to be spent on them. Sometimes I just think it's unrelated. But in general, I haven't loved like the presence of these subplots in the Monster High media. Even if I liked the idea, I just didn't like how it was incorporated. But I'm happy to say I don't feel that way about Frights Camera Action's subplot, which is basically that Howleen and Toralei are fighting over which vampire actor is cuter, which gave me really violent flashbacks to the Team Edward versus Team Jacob debate. And if I'm being realistic, no, this subplot didn't need to happen. Like, it wasn't important, but I didn't think that it took away from the main storyline in the same way that other subplots in other movies have. I think Frights Camera Action was written in such a strong way that having the kind of silly subplot was just like something funny to have on the side, instead of it feeling like it was detracting from the overall storyline. And also, it did technically tie in, because the subplot concludes with them finding out it's actually the same actor who played both characters, which first of all was hilarious. And that leads to Ghoulia realizing that Elizabeth is Veronica Von Vamp. So it wasn't even like a completely useless subplot. It was silly and goofy for like most of the movie, but at the very end it had a tie-in to the actual plot and had actual importance, and it was just so much more well written than like any other subplot in the Monster High movies, and I was so excited to get to see that because I was a little nervous when I found myself enjoying the movie that it was going to be like, oh, when the subplot comes up I'm not going to like this, but I didn't feel that way at all, and I'm so happy that I didn't. I think one of the best things about Frights camera action is how much it added to like the lore and the overall setting of the Monster High world. Many, many, many Monster High movies, I've made some sort of critique where I feel like something is written in and it's not explained well, or it doesn't make sense within the world of Monster High. Like, for example, in the webisodes and in some of the movies too, the monsters are afraid of other monsters that are like less sentient, and it just is kind of weird for monsters to be afraid of the same things humans are, at least to me. But Frights camera action gave me like the exact opposite feeling of things like that, because I just think everything was so well written and fit into the world so well, and really made me feel like the world was real and was being expanded upon in an interesting way. For example, with like the vampire court, I think that's the biggest example. Draculaura references the Great Split, which was basically when half of the vampires wanted to remain kind of the monsters in power and try to retain power over other monster species, and then other vampires wanted to pursue like equality amongst different monster species. And I thought this was a really good writing point, because it's something that we in like our actual world have seen time and time and time again throughout history, with splits of like politics and religion and cultural differences and all of these different things. You know, like the Great Split is a very believable concept because it literally happens all the time, where people have different ideas and those ideologies clash and those sorts of things. So it was something to add into the Monster High universe that is so believable and so real that it made it feel like the Monster High world was more likely to like be a possibility, if that makes sense. It didn't feel contrived or shoehorned in. It felt very natural. Like we were genuinely just learning about a bit of history that actually happened because it seemed so plausible. And I thought that was a really good way to kind of introduce that conflict that Stoker was still carrying on during the course of Frights camera action. Another thing about vampires is that this movie established the fact that vampires get their powers after doing a great deed. Draculaura doesn't have her vampire powers yet because she hasn't done anything like notable, whereas other vampires such as Gory have gotten their powers, even though presumably they're like roughly the same age since they're both going to Monster High, because she's done more things. And I think this is such an interesting concept that the vampire powers aren't tied to age but actually actions. So you could get them when you're super young if you do something, or you might not get them until you're super old and like then you finally do something. I just thought it was a really interesting concept, and it also was a really rewarding concept because after the events of Frights camera action, Draculaura has found the vampire heart, found Elizabeth, and restored the vampire queen, and that's a great deed, and so we see that she then gets her vampire powers. So again, I feel like it's a piece of world building that is interesting and makes sense. It feels believable within the context of the story, and it has a great payoff in like the actual movie, because you get to see Draculaura go from someone who feels like she's never done anything important and isn't important to having done like one of the most amazing things you could possibly do within the vampire world, and getting to get her powers as a result of that. It was just a really well written piece of lore. And then when we get to like the setting aspect in a very literal sense, I thought Frights camera action was so fun for getting to show us different parts of the Monster High world. Like for the most part, we see the actual school, right? Yes, there was Scaris that took place in Scaris, but most of the movies and most of the episodes and things take place in or around the Monster High school. So I thought it was really cool that with this movie, we get to see so many different locations. We got to see like the Vampire Court Castle in Transylvania, and then we got to see London and New Orleans, and it was just so interesting to see these places because like they're just puns on real world places, right? Like London, Lundum, but you added into the Monster High world, and it was really cool to see the way that it was brought to life in like this visual way, to where it's still London, but just with that extra little like creepy factor added in so that it feels more like Monster High. I especially really liked New Orleans with the like skeleton performers. I thought that was really, really fun. And it was just so cool to literally flesh out this world and bring it beyond Monster High itself and get to see these cities portrayed in like a Monster High style. Now, sadly, that does bring me to the last bit of critique that I have for this movie, which is Hauntlywood, because when you compare it to the castle in London and New Orleans, it just immediately felt so much cheesier than the other places. Like when the ghouls get to Hauntlywood, there's this weird little like montage of them doing, I guess, touristy things, and it's a very different animation style, and it just feels so set apart. And maybe that was intentional because Hauntlywood is like where they finally find Elizabeth, so maybe it was supposed to feel special, but for me it just felt kind of cheesy, and it kind of took me out of the movie a little bit. Obviously not enough to make me hate it because there were so many good things going on, but like, this wouldn't be an honest review if I didn't mention the things that I didn't love as much, and I definitely thought that was one of the weaker points of Frights camera action. And I almost forgot to talk about this. I literally almost forgot to talk about this, but Rebecca, I was so genuinely curious the entire movie about how she kind of had this sixth sense about where the vampire heart might be and like what the clues were and all of that stuff. I was sitting there and I was really genuinely feeling curiosity, which is not something that most of the other movies have managed to evoke in me. So that was really fun to just feel. And then at the end, when it's revealed that Elizabeth had given the vampire heart to Hezekiah Steam, Rebecca's father, and that he built her and put it into her to keep safe, it just made perfect sense because Rebecca had the vampire heart inside of her. So of course it was calling her to Elizabeth and helping her retrace Elizabeth's footsteps. I just thought it was very well written and very exciting, and I honestly didn't predict that part, so that was really like an interesting surprise to get to have for me. And considering that these movies don't often surprise me, like in general a lot of Monster High movies have been pretty predictable, it was cool to have something that was enjoyable and well written and not something that I thought of. So yeah, as you can probably tell, I really liked this movie. It definitely was predictable in some ways, like I wasn't constantly being surprised throughout the movie, but I thought it was really good. I would go so far as to say that not only is Frights camera action a good Monster High movie, but just a good movie overall. Not in the sense that like it would break box office records if it was released in movie theaters, but I genuinely think it had a good plot and good writing and good characters and all of these amazing things, and I thoroughly enjoyed getting to watch it, which was a very pleasant experience since so many of these movie reviews are a little bit rough around the edges. It was really cool to get to enjoy one and get to like have fun with these characters instead of constantly writing down things that I wasn't enjoying. As always, I would love to hear what you guys thought of this film and also my takes on it. Do you disagree with me, or are you kind of like in line with me on this one? I would just love to know your opinions. The next movie I'm going to be watching is going to be Freaky Fusion, which I will say I'm a little nervous about. I try to go into these reviews and like into watching these movies with an open mind and an open heart, like to try to be fair. But I'm gonna be honest, I'm a little nervous about Freaky Fusion, but we're still gonna try to enjoy it, still try to have fun, so be on the lookout for that video. Hopefully it'll be another fun one like this one was. But yeah, that's going to be it for today, guys. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day or your night or whatever it might be, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye, guys!